The Galactic Colosseum. The Nexus, as it was known throughout the inhabited galaxies, hung in space like a colossal jewel, refracting the dying light of its host star. This gargantuan structure, a planet-sized arena crafted from exotic materials beyond the comprehension of most species, served as the ultimate battleground for the greatest warriors the universe had to offer. Billions of spectators from thousands of worlds crowded into the Nexus's massive viewing galleries. Some attended in person, their diverse physiologies necessitating a dizzying array of atmospheric conditions and gravity settings. Countless others watched via quantum-entangled holofeeds, their consciousness projected across vast distances to witness the spectacle firsthand. As the opening ceremony commenced, holographic displays larger than entire cities flickered to life. They showcased highlights from previous tournaments. A silicon-based life form liquefying its opponent with corrosive acid, a gaseous entity suffocating a rival within its nebulous form, and a hive-mind insectoid swarm dismantling a cyborg titan piece by piece. The crowd's excitement reached a fever pitch as the current champion's visage filled the screens. General Vox Thor of the Zarkonian Empire stood an imposing 12 feet tall, his 4 muscular arms rippling with barely contained power. His exoskeleton gleamed with a metallic sheen, adorned with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in time with his twin hearts. Vox Thor's previous match replayed for all to see. The Zarkonian faced off against a Titan-class battle droid, a formidable war machine standing 20 feet high and bristling with advanced weaponry. The droid's energy shields flared as it unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts, each capable of vaporizing a small building. But Vox Thor moved with preternatural speed, his reflexes honed by centuries of combat. He dodged and weaved through the onslaught, closing the distance in seconds. The Zarkonian's lower arms grasped the droid's legs, while his upper limbs struck with precision at key structural points. In a display of raw strength that left the audience breathless, Vox Thor lifted the massive war machine over his head. With a roar that shook the very foundations of the arena, he brought the droid down across his knee. The sound of tearing metal and shattering circuitry echoed throughout the Colosseum as the Titan-class warrior split in two. As the replay faded, Vox Thor himself entered the arena floor. The Zarkonian steps shook the ground, his presence commanding absolute attention. He raised all 4 arms, basking in the adulation of the crowd. "Who dares to challenge the might of the Zarkonian Empire?" His voice boomed, amplified by the arena's acoustic enhancers. "Who among you believes they can stand against the undefeated champion of the Nexus?" The audience roared in response, a cacophony of cheers, screeches, and other alien vocalizations that threatened to drown out even the arena's powerful sound system. Vox Thor's eyes, compound organs capable of seeing across multiple spectrums, scanned the gathered competitors. There were the usual suspects, the cybernetically enhanced praetors of the Mech Collective, their bodies more machine than flesh. The ethereal luminae, beings of pure energy barely contained within force fields. The hive-mind Vesperi, a writhing mass of insectoid creatures moving with eerie synchronicity. But it was the new arrivals that caught the general's attention. Each galactic cycle brought fresh meat to the grinder, species that had recently achieved faster-than-light travel and earned their place in the greater cosmic community. These newcomers often provided momentary amusement before being crushed under the heel of more established powers. As Vox Thor surveyed the competition, the arena's AI announced the commencement of the preliminary rounds. Holographic brackets appeared, mapping out the tournament structure. Lesser-known warriors would fight for the chance to face seeded champions like Vox Thor in later stages. The first match pitted a praetorial berserker against a Lumine architect. The cyborg charged forward, its armored frame shrugging off the energy being's initial attacks. But as the praetor closed in for the kill, the Lumine suddenly expanded, engulfing its opponent in a miniature star. When the light faded, only a pile of molten metal remained. Next came a battle between a Vesperi swarm and a Gorgolian rock beast. The insectoid hive attempted to overwhelm their opponent with sheer numbers, but the Gorgolian's crystalline hide proved impenetrable. With a reverberating howl, the rock beast began to spin, becoming a whirlwind of razor-sharp edges that shredded the Vesperi into chitinous confetti. As the preliminary matches continued, Voxthor found his attention drawn to the spectators' gallery. Among the VIP boxes reserved for galactic dignitaries and corporate moguls, he spotted Grand Admiral Zexcora, the supreme leader of the Zarkonian war fleets. Her presence was unexpected. The Grand Admiral rarely left the front lines of the Empire's endless expansion. Using his neural implant, Voxthor opened a secure channel to his superior. "Grand Admiral, you honor us with your presence. Have you come to witness my inevitable triumph?" Zexcora's voice crackled in his mind. "Your victories bring glory to the Empire, Voxthor, but I am here on a matter of grave importance. Our long-range scouts have detected an anomaly at the edge of charted space. A new species has achieved faster-than-light travel." Voxthor's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Fresh conquests for the Empire, then. What manner of beings are they?" "That's just it," Zexcora replied, her tone uncharacteristically uncertain. "We're not sure. Our initial probes were destroyed before they could gather substantial data. What little we recovered suggests a level of technological advancement that should be impossible for a newly spacefaring race." The general's amusement faded, replaced by a mixture of curiosity and concern. Could they be a threat to the Empire? "Unknown," came the terse reply. "But the High Command is taking no chances. We've dispatched a battle fleet to their home system. However, given the strategic importance of the Nexus tournament, we believe they may attempt to make first contact here." Voxthor's eyes narrowed, scanning the arena with renewed focus. "You suspect they've entered the competition. Under what guise?" "We're not certain," Zexcora admitted. "Our intelligence suggests they're humanoid, but capable of blending in with various species. Be on your guard, champion. These newcomers may be more than they appear." As the secure channel closed, Voxthor's attention was drawn back to the arena floor. The preliminary rounds were concluding, and the survivors were assembling for the next stage of the tournament. Among them stood beings of incredible power and skill, each a legend in their own right. But now, as Voxthor studied his potential opponents, he found himself searching for anomalies. Who among them might be hiding their true nature? Which of these warriors could be an agent of this mysterious new race? The Zarkonian champion's blood began to pump faster, his combat glands secreting a potent cocktail of stimulants into his system. For the first time in centuries, Voxthor felt a twinge of uncertainty. The thrill of genuine challenge, long absent from his battles, sent a shiver down his armored spine. As the tournament's AI announced the next round of matchups, Voxthor made a silent vow. He would root out these interlopers, these upstart beings who dared to challenge the established order of the cosmos. And when he found them, he would show them, and all who watched, why the Zarkonian Empire stood unchallenged as the greatest power in the known universe. The galactic Colosseum trembled with anticipation, unaware that it stood on the precipice of a moment that would reshape the balance of power across the stars. As Voxthor stepped forward to meet his next opponent, the fate of entire civilizations hung in the balance, waiting to be decided in the crucible of combat that was the Nexus. The mysterious entrant. The Nexus hummed with anticipation as the second round of the tournament approached. Holographic displays throughout the colossal arena flickered with statistics and odds. Bookmakers from 1,000 worlds adjusting their predictions based on the carnage of the preliminary matches. The air crackled with an almost palpable energy, a mixture of bloodlust and awe that transcended species barriers. General Voxthor stood at the center of the arena, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the scared battleground. The Zarkonian champion had just finished dispatching his first opponent, a Magnetar monk from the Crab Nebula, with almost casual ease. As the monk's crushed helmet rolled away, leaving a trail of luminous blood, Voxthor raised all four arms in triumph, drinking in the adulation of the crowd. But even as he basked in his victory, the general's compound eyes darted from side to side, searching for any sign of the mysterious new species Grand Admiral Zexcora had warned him about. So far, nothing seemed amiss. The remaining competitors were all known quantities, powerful and skilled, certainly, but nothing that posed a true threat to Zarkonian supremacy. Suddenly, a commotion erupted in the upper atmosphere of the Nexus. Warning klaxons blared as the arena's defensive systems detected an unauthorized entry. Spectators gasped and pointed as a streak of fire tore through the sky, leaving a trail of ionized particles in its wake. "Attention all beings," the arena's AI announced, its measured tones at odds with the chaos unfolding above. "An unidentified object has breached the Nexus's outer perimeter. Please remain calm and—" The rest of the message was drowned out as the flaming object smashed into the arena floor, mere meters from where Voxthor stood. The impact sent tremors through the entire structure, knocking many spectators off their feet and causing several of the weaker competitors to lose their balance. As the dust began to settle, Voxthor squinted through the haze, his enhanced vision piercing the clouds of debris. The object was some sort of transport pod, but unlike any he had ever seen. Its hull was scorched and battered, covered in strange markings that defied easy categorization. Sparks flew from ruptured power conduits, and an acrid smoke poured from seams in the craft's armor. For a moment, nothing moved. The entire Nexus held its breath, billions of beings across the galaxy frozen in suspense. Then, with a hiss of escaping gases, a hatch on the side of the pod slowly began to open. Voxthor tensed, his combat glands flooding his system with a potent mixture of stimulants and performance enhancers. Was this the moment? Had the mysterious new species chosen to make their grand entrance in the most dramatic way possible? A figure stumbled out of the smoking wreckage, coughing and waving away tendrils of acrid smoke. As it straightened up, a ripple of confusion swept through the arena. The newcomer stood barely 6 feet tall, clad in battered armor that looked almost comically outdated compared to the advanced tech on display throughout the Nexus. The alien crowd, after a moment of stunned silence, erupted in laughter. Even Voxthor, despite his earlier wariness, felt his mandibles click in amusement. This was the great threat to the Zarkonian Empire, some backward primitive who could barely pilot a sublight craft. Striding forward, Voxthor reached out with one of his massive hands and effortlessly lifted the newcomer off the ground. The figure's arms and legs flailed helplessly as the Zarkonian general brought it close to his face, compound eyes scanning for any hint of deception. What pitiful world sent this weakling to die? Voxthor sneered, his voice booming across the arena. He gave the figure a little shake, eliciting another round of laughter from the spectators. "Speak, little one. Tell us the name of the backwater planet that will soon be nothing more than another footnote in the glorious history of Zarkonian conquest." But the figure remained silent, its features hidden behind an opaque visor. Voxthor's amusement began to fade, replaced by a gnawing sense of unease. Something wasn't right here. The armor, primitive as it appeared, was of a design he'd never encountered before. And despite his rough handling, the newcomer's body language didn't convey fear or panic. If anything, it seemed almost relaxed. Before Voxthor could ponder this further, a chime rang out across the arena. The tournament AI's voice followed. "Attention, competitors and spectators. The unscheduled arrival has been verified as a last-minute entrant into the galactic tournament. All necessary paperwork and entry fees have been filed and accepted. The newcomer is hereby officially recognized as a tournament participant." A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. Last-minute entries were rare, and the fees for such a late registration were astronomical. Whoever this mysterious fighter was, they clearly had powerful backers. Voxthor's eyes narrowed. Could this be a ploy? A distraction while the real threat maneuvered into position? He turned his attention back to the figure, still dangling from his grasp. "Well then, participant," he growled, bringing the newcomer close to his face. "Do you have a name? Or shall we simply call you cannon fodder?" For the first time, the figure spoke. Its voice, slightly distorted by the helmet's audio system, was calm and oddly melodious. "You can call me Jack. It's as good a name as any." Something about the voice sent a shiver down Voxthor's spine. There was a confidence there, an easy assurance that seemed wildly at odds with the being's apparent physical inferiority. The general's instincts, honed over centuries of combat, screamed a warning. With a grunt of disgust, Voxthor tossed Jack aside. The figure hit the ground hard but rolled with the impact, coming up in a crouch that spoke of trained reflexes. "Interesting." "Very well, Jack," Voxthor announced, playing to the crowd. "You've bought yourself a place in this tournament. But know this, you face warriors who have honed their skills across 1,000 worlds, in battles that have shaped the very fate of galaxies. Whatever backwater hole you crawled out of, whatever luck or trickery got you here, it ends now." The Zarkonian champion spread all 4 of his arms wide, eclipsing the much smaller figure in his shadow. "I am General Voxthor, undefeated champion of the Nexus, conqueror of star systems, and tip of the spear of the greatest empire the universe has ever known. Your death will be but a footnote in my legend, little Jack. I hope, for your sake, that your species has gods. You'll be meeting them soon." As the crowd roared its approval, Voxthor turned and strode away, his cape billowing behind him. But even as he basked in the adulation of countless beings, a part of his mind remained fixed on the puzzle behind him. Who was this Jack? What game were they playing? And why did he have the unsettling feeling that, for the first time in centuries, he might be facing a worthy opponent? As the tournament's next round began, and the roar of combat once again filled the Nexus, the mysterious newcomer stood quietly at the edge of the arena, unnoticed by the grandstanding Voxthor or the bloodthirsty crowd. A small light on the figure's gauntlet blinked steadily. Deep within the battered armor, quantum-encrypted transmissions raced across vast stretches of space, carrying with them information that would soon shake the very foundations of galactic civilization. The game was afoot, and the first move had been made. The universe held its breath, unaware that it stood on the precipice of a change that would rewrite the very nature of interstellar politics, and at the center of it all stood a simple figure in battered armor, waiting patiently for their moment to reveal the true face of humanity to the stars. Unexpected skill. The Nexus trembled with anticipation as the tournament's most brutal phase began, the free-for-all battle royale. This was no mere test of strength or skill, but a chaotic maelstrom where only the craftiest, most ruthless warriors would survive. Hundreds of competitors from across the galaxy were teleported into a massive, ever-shifting arena filled with treacherous terrain and hidden dangers. General Voxthor materialized on a floating platform of crystalline material, his massive frame immediately drawing the attention of nearby competitors. With a roar that shook the very air, the Zarkonian champion charged into battle, his 4 arms becoming a blur of destruction as he engaged multiple opponents simultaneously. Across the arena, other formidable warriors began their own paths of carnage. The cybernetically enhanced praetors of the Mech Collective moved with mechanical precision, their augmented bodies shrugging off attacks that would have vaporized lesser beings. The ethereal luminae flitted between solid and energy states, confounding their opponents with impossible maneuvers. The hive mind Vesperi swarmed over their victims, thousands of insectoid bodies working in perfect unison to overwhelm even the mightiest foes. But where was the mysterious newcomer, the so-called Jack? Voxthor's compound eyes scanned the battlefield as he fought, searching for any sign of the small armored figure. Had the weakling already fallen, perhaps cowering in some corner, hoping to avoid the notice of the true warriors? Suddenly, a commotion erupted on the far side of the arena. A praetor champion, its body a masterpiece of lethal cybernetics, came crashing down from a high vantage point. The machine being's eyes flickered with confusion, and was that fear? As it struggled to rise, onlookers gasped at the sight of its severed hydraulic legs, cut with surgical precision. Before anyone could process what had happened, a Lumine warrior who had been dominating its sector of the battlefield suddenly winked out of existence. Its energy form, which had effortlessly absorbed every attack thrown its way, simply vanished. In its place floated a small device, emitting a low-frequency pulse that somehow contained and neutralized the being's essence. Vox Thor's blood ran cold. These were no random occurrences. Someone, or something, was methodically taking down the tournament's top contenders, using strategies perfectly tailored to each opponent's weaknesses. But who? And how? The answer came in a most unexpected fashion. As a pack of Vesperi drones swarmed towards a seemingly defenseless opponent, a small armored figure stepped into view. Vox Thor's eyes widened in recognition. It was Jack, the human. For Vox Thor was now certain this being belonged to the mysterious new species, stood calmly as the insectoid swarm approached. Just as it seemed the Vesperi would engulf their prey, Jack pulled out a device no larger than a handheld communicator. With a flick of a switch, the air around the human shimmered. The effect on the Vesperi was immediate and catastrophic. The swarm's perfect synchronization faltered, individual drones colliding with each other in confusion. Within seconds, the entire pack had dissolved into chaos, easy pickings for other competitors eager to rack up elimination points. As Vox Thor watched in stunned disbelief, Jack turned slowly, surveying the battlefield. Even from a distance, the Zarkonian general could feel the weight of that hidden gaze. A chill ran down his spine as he realized the human had been aware of his scrutiny all along. With a grace that belied the bulky appearance of its armor, Jack began to move through the arena. What happened next defied easy description. It was as if the human had memorized the exact capabilities and weaknesses of every single species present. Each encounter was brief, brutal, and perfectly executed. A Magnetar monk unleashed a wave of crushing gravitational force, only to find its powers reflected back upon itself by some hidden mechanism in Jack's armor. A Gorgolian rock beast shattered into 1,000 pieces as the human exploited a resonance frequency that even the creature itself hadn't known about. A chronoshifter, capable of manipulating the flow of time itself, found its temporal fields unraveling in the face of technology that should have been centuries beyond human development. As the battle royal raged on, a pattern emerged. The human never struck the first blow, never directly engaged an opponent who wasn't already attacking. But any being foolish enough to target Jack quickly found themselves outmatched in ways they couldn't begin to comprehend. Vox Thor, still grappling with multiple foes, felt a growing sense of unease. This was wrong. Humans were supposed to be newcomers to the galactic stage, barely out of their own solar system. How could they possess technology and combat techniques that countered the greatest warriors the universe had to offer? A stray thought struck the Zarkonian champion, chilling him to his core. What if humans weren't newcomers at all? What if their apparent absence from galactic affairs had been deliberate? A ruse, perhaps to study the other species unnoticed. But that would mean Vox Thor's moment of distraction cost him. A Lumine warrior, sensing an opportunity, launched a searing beam of energy directly at the general's face. In any other circumstance, Vox Thor's reflexes would have been more than sufficient to dodge or deflect the attack. But his mind was elsewhere, grappling with implications too vast and terrifying to fully comprehend. Time seemed to slow as the energy beam approached. Vox Thor could see his own death reflected in its blinding light. 4 arms, for all their strength, suddenly felt useless and slow. The proud champion of the Zarkonian Empire closed his eyes, awaiting the end. It never came. A shadow passed before Vox Thor, accompanied by a sound like reality itself being torn asunder. The general's eyes snapped open in time to see the Lumine's energy beam split in two, its halves passing harmlessly to either side of him. Standing between Vox Thor and certain death was a familiar armored figure. Jack turned, the featureless helmet regarding the Zarkonian for a long moment. When the human spoke, its voice was calm, almost conversational. "You know where I come from, We have a saying: keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I'm not sure yet which category you fall into, General. But either way, I think it's in both our interests if you survive a little longer. Before Voxthor could respond, Jack was gone, diving back into the fray with inhuman speed and grace. The Zarkonian champion stood frozen, his mind reeling. In saving his life, the human had done something far more profound. It had shattered every assumption, every certainty upon which Voxthor had built his understanding of the universe. As the battle royale entered its final, most desperate phase, Voxthor found himself fighting on autopilot. His body, honed by centuries of combat, continued to dominate his opponents, but his mind was elsewhere, grappling with questions that threatened the very foundations of galactic civilization. Who were these humans, truly? What was their purpose here? And perhaps most terrifyingly, what would happen when they finally revealed their true nature to an unsuspecting universe? As the number of competitors dwindled and the inevitable confrontation with Jack drew nearer, General Voxthor, undefeated champion of the Nexus, conqueror of star systems, and tip of the spear of the greatest empire the universe had ever known, felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. The human revealed. The battle royale had winnowed the field of competitors down to a mere handful. The Nexus arena, once teeming with warriors from across the galaxy, now stood eerily quiet. Debris from shattered war machines and the remnants of fallen combatants littered the scared landscape. In the viewing galleries, billions of spectators leaned forward in anticipation, sensing that the final confrontation was at hand. At one end of the arena stood General Voxthor, his massive frame battered but unbowed. The Zarkonian champion's armor bore the marks of 100 near misses, testament to the ferocity of the battles he'd endured. Yet despite his imposing presence, there was a new wariness in Voxthor's stance, a tension that spoke of deeper concerns than mere physical combat. At the other end, the mysterious figure known only as Jack waited silently. The human's armor, which had seemed so primitive at first glance, now radiated an aura of hidden menace. Every movement, every stance, hinted at capabilities far beyond what should have been possible for a supposedly new species to the galactic stage. Between them lay the broken forms of the last few eliminated competitors, a testament to the skill and ruthlessness of the two finalists. A Praetor cyborg twitched sporadically, its neural networks firing random commands to severed limbs. The dissipating energy signature of a Lumine warrior painted the air with ghostly auroras, and scattered across the ground were the chitinous remains of countless Vesperi drones, their hive minds silenced. For a long moment, neither Voxthor nor Jack moved. The tension in the arena built to near unbearable levels as spectators and competitors alike waited to see who would make the first move. When it came, it was with explosive suddenness. Voxthor, perhaps sensing that a swift offensive was his best chance, launched himself forward with a roar that shook the very foundations of the Nexus. All four of his arms became a blur of motion, each one wielding a weapon pulled from some hidden compartment in his armor. Energy blades, graviton hammers, phase disruptors. The Zarkonian unleashed an arsenal that could have laid waste to an entire planet. But Jack was no longer there. With a grace that seemed to defy the laws of physics, the human flowed around Voxthor's attacks like water around stone. Each deadly blow missed by mere millimeters, the energy weapons leaving superheated contrails in the air as they passed harmlessly by. Impossible, Voxthor growled, his voice a mixture of frustration and growing fear. No being can move like that. What manner of trickery is this? Jack's reply came not in words, but in action. As Voxthor's assault reached its zenith, the human suddenly stepped inside the Zarkonian's guard. With movements too fast for even Voxthor's enhanced senses to track, Jack struck a series of precise blows against the general's armor. At first, it seemed as though the attacks had done nothing. Voxthor's armor, forged from materials capable of withstanding the heart of a dying star, showed no visible damage. But as the Zarkonian attempted to press his attack, he felt a growing weakness in his limbs. Warnings flashed across his helmet's heads-up display, indicating cascading failures in his suit's power systems. What have you done?" Voxthor gasped, struggling to keep his massive frame upright as his armor's support systems flickered and died. Jack circled the faltering champion, voice calm and almost professorial. "Targeted electromagnetic pulses, tuned to the specific resonance frequency of your armor's power cores. A trick we humans learned centuries ago, when we were still fighting each other instead of exploring the stars." Voxthor's mind reeled. Centuries. But that would mean you've been out there all this time, watching us, studying us. A small nod from the human. "We had to be sure, you see. Sure that we were ready. Sure that we understood the players on the galactic stage. And perhaps most importantly, sure that the galaxy needed what we had to offer." With a final titanic effort, Voxthor lunged forward. His armor, now little more than deadweight, slowed him to a fraction of his usual speed. But still, he was a Zarkonian warrior, with strength and reflexes honed over centuries of combat. His outstretched hand, fingers curled into a devastating claw, reached for Jack's helmet. "Enough games," the general roared. "Face me, human. Show yourself." Time seemed to slow as Voxthor's attack connected. There was a moment of resistance, and then the sound of tearing metal filled the air. The human's helmet, torn free from its seals, went flying across the arena. A collective gasp echoed through the Nexus as Jack's face was finally revealed. Billions of beings, watching from countless worlds, leaned closer to their viewing screens, eager for their first glimpse of this mysterious new species. What they saw defied easy description. Jack, or rather, the being that had called itself Jack, possessed features that seemed at once familiar and utterly alien. The basic structure was humanoid, yes, but there was an otherworldly quality to the skin, which seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. The eyes, rather than being simple optical organs, appeared to be composed of swirling galaxies in miniature, depths of wisdom and knowledge that hinted at perspectives beyond mortal comprehension. But most shocking of all was the smile that played across those impossible features. It was a smile of kindness, of understanding, and perhaps most disturbingly, of fond amusement. "Oh, Voxthor," the being said, its voice now freed from the constraints of the helmet's audio system. The sound seemed to bypass the ears entirely, resonating directly in the minds of all who heard it. "Did you really think we'd send one of our children to make first contact?" The Zarkonian champion stumbled backward, his mighty frame trembling. What are you?" The being that had called itself Jack spread its arms wide, encompassing not just the arena, but the entirety of the Nexus, the surrounding space, and by implication, the galaxy itself. "We are humanity, Voxthor. Not as we began, but as we have become. We are the shepherds, the guardians, the silent watchers who have guided the younger races from the shadows for millennia." As the being spoke, its form began to shift and change. The armor that had seemed so primitive now flowed like quicksilver, reforming into configurations that defied easy categorization. One moment it appeared organic, the next mechanical, and in between something that was neither and both. "But why?" Voxthor managed to ask, his once booming voice now barely a whisper. "Why reveal yourselves now?" The being's smile took on a sad quality. "Because the galaxy stands on the brink, General. Old hatreds, ancient conflicts, the ever-present drive for conquest and dominion. They threaten to tear apart the very fabric of space-time itself. We had hoped that given enough time, the younger races would find their way to enlightenment on their own. But we can no longer stand idle." As the being spoke, the very reality of the Nexus seemed to waver and distort. The barriers between dimensions thinned, offering those present a fleeting glimpse of truths too vast and terrible for mortal minds to fully comprehend. "We are here," the voice resonated, to offer a choice, a chance for all sentient beings to put aside their differences and join us in exploring not just the physical universe, but the very nature of existence itself. The being extended a hand, no longer armored, but composed of swirling energies and possibilities, toward Voxthor. What say you, champion of the Zarkonian Empire? Will you be the first to take this step, to leave behind the petty squabbles of empires and lead your people into a new age of understanding? As Voxthor stared at the offered hand, his entire worldview crumbling around him, the Nexus fell silent. In living rooms and palaces, in starships and hollowed-out asteroids, in gas giant habitats and dimensional pocket universes, countless beings held their breath. The fate of galaxies hung in the balance, awaiting the decision of one humbled warrior. David versus Goliath. The Nexus hung suspended in a moment of cosmic significance. General Voxthor, once the undefeated champion of the Zarkonian Empire, stood frozen before the outstretched hand of the being that had called itself Jack. The revelation of humanity's true nature, not as newcomers to the galactic stage, but as ancient guardians of cosmic order, had shattered every preconception held by the assembled species. For what felt like an eternity, Voxthor remained motionless. His mighty frame, now stripped of its technological advantages, trembled almost imperceptibly. The compound eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations darted back and forth, as if seeking an escape from this reality-altering moment. Then, with a suddenness that startled even the transdimensional being before him, Voxthor acted. He laughed. It began as a low rumble, building quickly into a booming guffaw that echoed throughout the arena. The spectators, both present and watching across the galaxy, stirred in confusion. Was this a sign of madness? Had the proud general's mind finally snapped under the weight of these revelations? But as the laughter continued, something changed in Voxthor's stance. The trembling ceased. His shoulders, which had begun to slump under the burden of defeat, straightened once more. And in his eyes, a new fire ignited, not of conquest or dominion, but of understanding and perhaps a touch of wry amusement at the cosmic joke in which he found himself a participant. "Oh, Jack, or whatever your true name might be," Voxthor said, his voice regaining some of its former strength. "You beings, for all your power and wisdom, have made a fundamental error." The transdimensional entity cocked its head, galaxies swirling in its eyes. "Oh, and what might that be, General?" Voxthor's mandibles clicked in a Zarkonian grin. "You have forgotten what it truly means to be young." With that, the general did something entirely unexpected. He dropped into a fighting stance, not the tech-augmented style he had relied upon earlier, but an ancient Zarkonian martial art, one practiced long before his species had reached for the stars. "You offer us a choice," Voxthor continued, beginning to circle the being once known as Jack. "To set aside our conflicts, to join you in some grand cosmic exploration. But in doing so, you ask us to abandon the very thing that defines us. Our struggle, our growth, our right to forge our own path through the universe." The entity's form shimmered, its expression a mixture of surprise and something that might have been respect. "You would reject our offer of enlightenment, of peace throughout the galaxy." Voxthor nodded, never taking his eyes off his opponent. "Peace without struggle is stagnation. Enlightenment without the journey to attain it is meaningless. You say you've watched us for millennia, guided us from the shadows. Then you should know that it is through conflict, yes, even war, that we grow, that we learn, that we become more than what we were." As he spoke, Voxthor began to move. His attacks were not the technologically enhanced blows of before, but something more primal, more authentic. Each strike, each feint, each movement was a distillation of countless generations of Zarkonian evolution and martial prowess. To the astonishment of all watching, the transdimensional being found itself hard-pressed to avoid these attacks. Its form, capable of manipulating the very fabric of space-time, seemed to struggle against the sheer physical presence and skill of the Zarkonian warrior. "You see," Vox Thor grunted between strikes. Even now, faced with power beyond comprehension, we adapt. We grow. We push ourselves beyond our limits. This is what it means to be alive, to be part of the great tapestry of existence. Not to have the answers handed to us, but to strive, to fail, and to rise again in search of them. The battle between them became a dance, a physical representation of the philosophical clash between cosmic guidance and the chaotic beauty of natural evolution. Vox Thor, against all odds, began to land blows, not through strength or advanced technology, but through the sheer indomitable will that had driven his species to the stars. As the fight progressed, something remarkable began to happen. The other fallen competitors, those who had been eliminated earlier in the tournament, began to stir. Inspired by Vox Thor's words and actions, they rose to join him, not in combat against each other, but in a unified stand against the idea of surrendering their autonomy. Praetors, their cybernetic bodies sparking and damaged, formed a line beside the Zarkonian general. Lumine warriors, their energy forms flickering but defiant, took up flanking positions. Even the scattered Vesperi drones began to reassemble, forming a swirling insectoid cloud around the gathered warriors. The being that had been Jack watched this display with growing amazement. Its form continued to shift and change, as if struggling to find a configuration that could encompass the complexity of what it was witnessing. "You would all choose this?" it asked, its voice resonating through the minds of all present. Struggle, conflict, the long, arduous path of self-determination over the peace and enlightenment we offer. It was the Praetor champion who answered, its synthesized voice crackling with determination. "We choose to forge our own destiny, to face the challenges of the universe on our own terms." A Lumine added, its voice a chorus of harmonic frequencies. "It is through adversity that we discover our true potential. Your guidance, while well-intentioned, would rob us of that opportunity." The Vesperi swarm spoke next, countless voices unified in a single purpose. Diversity, competition, even conflict. These are the crucibles in which new ideas are forged. We cannot abandon them, even in the name of cosmic harmony. Vox Thor, standing at the center of this impromptu alliance, raised his voice once more. "You ask us to take your hand, to follow you into some trans-dimensional utopia. Instead, I extend my hand to you." The general stretched out his arm, mirroring the being's earlier gesture. "Join us. Leave behind your lofty perch as distant guardians. Remember what it means to strive, to struggle, to live as part of this chaotic, beautiful universe." For a long moment, the Nexus fell silent. The transdimensional being stood motionless, its form continuing to shift and flow as it processed this unexpected turn of events. Then, slowly, a change came over its features. The swirling galaxies in its eyes seemed to coalesce, forming structures more akin to natural organic orbs. Its liquid metal skin began to solidify, taking on a texture that, while still alien, appeared more grounded in physical reality. With a gesture that sent ripples through the very fabric of space-time, the being reached out and grasped Vox Thor's outstretched hand. "Perhaps," it said, its voice now a single clear tone rather than a cosmic resonance, "we have indeed forgotten something vital about the nature of existence. Your courage, your determination, your unwillingness to accept a future handed to you. These are qualities we once possessed, long ago." As their hands clasped, a surge of energy pulsed through the Nexus. But it was not the reality-warping power of before. Instead, it felt like a renewal, a reconnection with the fundamental forces that drove life and evolution across the cosmos. The being, now appearing more solidly humanoid, though still clearly alien, addressed the assembled warriors and the billions watching across the galaxy. "The tournament is over. But a new competition begins, not one of physical combat or technological supremacy, but a race to explore, to understand, and to grow. We will not guide you from afar, but walk beside you as fellow travelers in this vast, unknowable universe." Vox Thor, still gripping the being's hand, turned to face the countless species watching this moment of cosmic significance. His voice, once used to proclaim the superiority of his empire, now rang out with a different message. To all beings, in every corner of the galaxy, the choice is yours. Cling to old hatreds and the lust for dominion, and we will oppose you. But step forward into this new age of exploration and mutual growth, and you will find allies among those you once called enemies. As the Nexus erupted in a cacophony of voices, cheering, debating, questioning, Voxthor allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He, who had entered this tournament seeking glory for his empire, now stood at the threshold of a new era for all sentient life. The galaxy would never be the same, and somehow that was more exhilarating than any victory he could have imagined.